welcome back to our channel. In the waning light of the 1970s, the United States Mint operated with the regular hum of procedure, precision, and expectation. The Lincoln cent had already etched its identity into American coinage since its debut in 1909, bearing the solemn profile of the 16th president with resolute consistency. Yet 1978, a year tucked quietly between the country's bicentennial enthusiasm and the economic uncertainties that loomed ahead, would carry within it a whisper of anomaly, an unassuming penny destined to disturb the quiet uniformity of its mintage. That year, the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints carried on with the familiar production of the copper-clad 1-cent coins. Each mint struck tens of millions, each piece passing through the presses with mechanical repetition. To the naked eye, there was little to distinguish a 1978 penny from any other minted during the decade. Weighing 3.11 grams and composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, the penny continued a long-standing standard that was soon to end just 4 years later in 1982, when the composition would shift to a zinc core due to rising copper costs. But in 1978, no one yet imagined that something quietly unusual had slipped through the rigorous checks. That something, as minor as a deviation in alignment, would prove revolutionary for a small circle of people. It wasn't until decades later that this penny's peculiar nature emerged from the shadows of obscurity. The discovery did not begin in a bustling auction house or under the gleaming lights of a museum exhibit. It happened in a quiet Midwestern basement, where fluorescent light buzzed overhead and coin albums lay open on a folding table. A lifelong collector named Harold Densley sat hunched over his magnifier, inspecting the latest additions from a bulk lot he'd won at an estate sale. He had combed through thousands of pennies over the years, mostly out of love, not ambition. It was the rhythmic comfort of copper and chronology that kept him returning. As he flipped open a plastic roll labeled 1978p, he found his expectations relaxed. Most of the coins matched his memory: modest luster, Lincoln's bust proud yet worn, and the familiar memorial reverse standing as the hallmark of the design. But one coin brought him to a pause that felt like inhaling and forgetting how to exhale. There was something off, and not just a little. The portrait of Lincoln appeared subtly tilted, and the rim around the top seemed thicker, pressing oddly into the Liberty to its left. At first glance, it resembled what novice collectors might dismiss as post-mint damage. But Harold had seen post-mint damage before. This wasn't it. He tilted the coin under his LED light. The obverse was slightly misaligned, yes, but it was more than that. The strike was off-center in a way that hadn't distorted the overall structure but instead introduced a tension imbalance, as though the coin had hesitated in the press for just a millisecond. The reverse, however, told an even stranger story. The steps of the Lincoln Memorial were mushy, almost ghosted, while the legends, United States of America, and E pluribus unum, arced inconsistently, breaking symmetry. What intrigued Harold most was a faint doubling on the word 1 cent, not from hub doubling as seen in famous double-die varieties, but a shadow-like echo that hinted at a mechanical error deep within the minting process. Over the next several days, Harold scoured coin forums and old numismatic journals. Mentions of a 1978 misalignment existed, but vague and unconfirmed. The San Francisco Mint had been known to produce proofs that year, but this wasn't a proof strike, and it bore no mint mark, suggesting Philadelphia. Could it be a misaligned die or a slight off-center strike from worn equipment? Experts he contacted proposed theories ranging from rotational misalignment to feeder finger errors, yet none could confirm its rarity without inspecting the piece in person, and so began Harold's journey into the uncertain terrain of valuation. At first, the coin's oddity was met with polite curiosity. A few regional dealers offered him small premiums, $20 here, $40 there, just in case the error turned out to be something more. But Harold declined. He sensed something unspoken in the coin's character, a story still unwritten. Word spread slowly, trickling from online message boards into the ears of seasoned error specialists. One prominent numismatist offered to appraise it in person, flying in from California with a briefcase lined in velvet and glass. When the coin was finally examined under high-powered microscopes and metallurgical tests, a pattern emerged. It was not merely an off-center strike or die deterioration. This penny had been the result of a multiple error event. The initial planchet had been misfed into the press, causing a rotational misalignment of both obverse and reverse dies. But more compellingly, the pressure had been inconsistent, either due to malfunction or a brief fluctuation in force, resulting in the ghost impressions on the reverse lettering. Most striking of all was the doubling on 1 cent, which, upon closer study, was identified as an early instance of a die shift error, predating known classifications for this type on 1978 cents. As experts debated the classification, auction houses began to take notice. In early 2007, a private auction listing drew an unexpected bidding war. The final hammer price, $3,200, astonishing for a coin that most would overlook in pocket change. Harold, stunned, refused to sell. The story wasn't over. Within a year, 2 more similar error pennies surfaced from private collections in Pennsylvania and Maryland, lending credence to a small run of defective dies used at the Philadelphia Mint late in the year. Estimates suggested no more than 10 to 15 such coins could exist, though fewer than 5 had ever been authenticated. The coin's fame rippled through the numismatic community, catalyzing renewed interest in late 1970s errors. Prices began to climb. From the $3,200 spike, it jumped to $5,600 within 3 years, then plateaued briefly as speculation cooled. Yet the mystery of the coin sustained its value. Collectors weren't just buying metal, they were buying an unsolved anomaly, a relic of mint mechanics that had gone almost unnoticed for decades. By 2020, the same coin Harold owned had been conservatively estimated at $8,000 by a certified grading service. Still, he didn't part with it. The coin was no longer just an object, it was a narrative he had lived, and then came the twist, uncovered not by collectors or auctioneers, but by a young archivist named Eleanor Gray who was digitizing historical records from the Philadelphia Mint. Deep within a binder of maintenance logs from late 1978, she uncovered a technician's handwritten note dated November 14, replaced OBV. Die on press number 19, reported slight misalignment and inconsistent strike pressure. No visible damage to planchet feed. Though terse, the entry matched both the date range and mechanical behavior theorized by experts about Harold's coin. More shocking, however, was the margin scribble added in red ink, pulled approximate 200 coins, uncertain if batch cleared QA. Eleanor's find confirmed that a small batch of coins had likely escaped detection, despite efforts to intercept them. But what truly reframed the story was another file, a copy of an internal memo referencing a press tolerance override experiment on the same press line, a last-minute test authorized to study efficiency during high-output months. The override had temporarily reduced the sensitivity of strike force monitoring, effectively allowing minor die shifts and planchet misfeeds to proceed without automatically halting the press. Harold's penny, it seemed, was not an accident at all, but a consequence of sanctioned experimentation. This revelation complicated the error's identity. Was it a mint defect or a historical artifact from a now documented procedural test? Numismatists debated whether this lessened or heightened its rarity. To many, the twist only elevated its appeal, no longer a mistake but a tangible result of bureaucratic improvisation during a transitional phase of mint operations. As rumors spread and collector interest surged anew, the coin's value climbed again. By 2023, one of the known specimens sold at an open auction for over $14,000. Even replicas made for educational purposes fetched hundreds. Harold, now in his late 70s, kept his original 1978 penny secured in a temperature-controlled capsule, still refusing to sell. Not for profit. Not for fame. But because the coin was now a vessel of history, discovery, and human error, an object that had changed him as much as he had uncovered it, and still, the search continues. Collectors pore over 1978 cents with newfound scrutiny, seeking the elusive misalignment, the spectral doubling, the story left behind in metal. Every pocketful of change, every roll of old coins, is now a potential portal. Not just to wealth, but to mystery. To the uncharted corners of mechanical failure and forgotten memos. To the possibility that history is always hiding, quietly, modestly, in copper and time. In 1985, the United States Mint was focused on volume. With over 5 billion 1-cent coins struck that year, the idea that one among them might slip through with a rare error, unnoticed for years, seemed almost laughable. The Lincoln cent, bearing the familiar visage of the 16th president and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, had been in consistent production since 1959. That year alone, the Philadelphia and Denver mints worked relentlessly to meet demand, pushing machinery to its limits and testing the boundaries of quality control. Amidst the river of copper-plated zinc pouring from the presses, one coin emerged that would eventually catch the attention of the most seasoned collectors, not with a roar, but with the whisper of something ever so slightly wrong. There was no reason to suspect that 1985 would become memorable. It was a year of routine for the mint, marked by efficiency rather than experimentation. The penny's composition, 97.5% zinc with a 2.5% copper plating, had been standardized in 1982 to combat rising material costs, and now it was simply business as usual. The minting process, refined and relentless, hummed along with minimal deviation. But under that mask of uniformity, mistakes were not impossible, just rare. And when they happened, they didn't always make noise. They waited, silent, in drawers, jars, and junk boxes for years, sometimes decades. The error in question might never have come to light if not for a quiet, meticulous man named Lewis Turner. A former postal worker turned numismatist, Lewis had retired with a modest pension and an ever-growing collection of small-denomination U.S. coins. He wasn't flashy. He didn't attend large conventions or spend fortunes on rare specimens. He preferred flea markets and estate sales, looking through overlooked boxes of change that others ignored. To Lewis, the joy was in the hunt, not the price tag. One Saturday morning in early spring, he visited an aging antique store outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Hidden behind a stack of tarnished silverware and faded baseball cards sat a mason jar labeled simply "Old Pennies," 25 cents each. Lewis began sorting through them, a magnifier loupe slung around his neck, methodical as ever. After several minutes of flipping and inspecting, his eyes caught on a coin that made him pause. It was a 1985 Lincoln cent, unassuming at first glance, but something about the rim looked unnatural. He lifted it under his light. The obverse struck him first. The lettering in "Liberty" was abnormally thin near the bell, almost as if part of the die had failed to strike evenly. The date seemed slightly doubled, not in the dramatic fashion of the 1955 double die, but with a strange ghosting, a soft echo. Even more unusual was the spacing between "In God We Trust" and the edge of the coin, slightly off-center, unbalanced, like a photo frame just a degree off-level. Then he flipped it. The reverse confirmed his suspicion. The Lincoln Memorial was flawed. The top steps appeared to fade halfway across. More tellingly, the 1 cent inscription bore what he recognized as a slight misalignment, tilted just enough to break the symmetry, but not so severe that the average eye would catch it. And beneath the words, "United States of America," a faint trace of doubling presented itself once again, not hub doubling, but the result of a die shift during the strike. Lewis recognized the markers immediately. Something had gone wrong in the minting press. That he purchased the coin, along with several others, and returned home to begin deeper inspection. For days, he reviewed mint reports, error guides, and previous auction archives. Very little existed about 1,985 penny errors of this nature. There were references to minor misalignments, but nothing that matched this specific combination: off-center elements, faint doubling, and incomplete reverse detail. He posted clear images on a numismatic forum, inviting speculation. Initial replies were lukewarm. Some believed it to be machine doubling, relatively common and not particularly valuable. Others advised him to have it graded before assuming anything. But one comment, buried deep in the thread, came from a well-known error specialist who noticed a detail others missed: a subtle warp in the planchet itself, which suggested that the blank might have been improperly punched or annealed before it was struck. That meant the error began before the strike, making it significantly more complex and rarer than typical post-strike abnormalities. Lewis sent the coin to a grading service, hoping to validate his suspicions. The turnaround took weeks. When the results returned, they stunned him. The coin was graded MS-64 red, and the error was confirmed as a multifaceted strike anomaly, caused by a combination of planchet preparation issues and a rotational die misalignment. The graders noted it as one of the most unique error patterns recorded for that year. It wasn't just one type of error, it was two or possibly three, layered into one unassuming cent. Interest began to build. Coin dealers contacted him privately, offering thousands, some out of curiosity, some out of genuine admiration. Lewis, like Harold before him, refused to sell. Instead, he documented the discovery, including every microscopic detail, and presented it to a regional coin show. His coin became a minor sensation. Collectors began scouring their own 1985 pennies with renewed fervor, eager to find siblings of Lewis's error. But none surfaced, at least not initially. By 2013, nearly 30 years after the coin's mintage, only one additional example had appeared. It shared the same telltale markers, a slightly misaligned obverse, faint doubling on the reverse, and incomplete architectural detail on the memorial. Both coins were attributed to the Philadelphia Mint, likely originating from the same press. This suggested a limited, faulty die run, perhaps only a few hundred coins at most. How many survived uncirculated was anyone's guess. What surprised collectors most was how long it took for the error to be identified. Given the massive volume of pennies produced in 1985, the chances of these flawed coins escaping notice for decades seemed unlikely. But therein lay the mystery. The new zinc composition adopted in 1982 introduced subtle complications to the striking process. While easier on materials, the softer metal was less forgiving to mechanical variance. Tiny shifts in alignment or pressure could create errors difficult to spot without magnification. This explained how a coin like Lewis's could remain hidden in plain sight for so long. With only two verified examples and whispers of a possible third in private hands, the value of Lewis's coin began to climb. Slowly at first. An offer of $2,500 came in 2014, followed by $4,000 the next year. Then, as online auction platforms expanded visibility, interest intensified. In 2019, one of the known error coins sold for just over $27,000 at a private sale, though details were closely guarded. Lewis's coin, with its higher grade and documentation trail, was soon appraised at over $40,000. What pushed the value higher was not just rarity, but intrigue. The story of an error that had evaded detection for decades, buried in a jar on a dusty shelf, captivated collectors. It was the kind of numismatic mystery that suggested many stories still waited to be uncovered in common coinage. The press alignment, the pre-strike planchet flaw, the doubling, each piece added a layer of narrative, a trail of clues that turned a penny into an artifact. In 2022, a major grading service revised its rarity estimate for the 1985 cent error, classifying it as ultra scarce with limited market activity. This sparked another wave of attention. Coin hunting videos across the internet cited the error. Collectors on social media speculated about where others might be hiding. Dealers began offering rewards for raw examples. Today, the 1985 1-cent penny with this specific error pattern commands an astonishing value on the open market. Depending on condition and clarity of the error, known valuations now range from $54,000 to as high as $110,000, an incredible leap from its humble origins in a jar marked 25 cents. Yet despite its monetary worth, the coin's greatest value lies in its reminder: even among billions, something unique can survive unnoticed, waiting for the right eyes to see what others missed. The year 2015 marked the continuation of a long-standing tradition in American coinage, as the United States Mint produced billions of Lincoln cents, ensuring their place as a staple in pockets, cash registers, and collections across the nation. These coins, still bearing Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse and the Union Shield on the reverse, represented not only a piece of daily commerce but a tangible link to history. The Mint's production numbers were staggering, with coins flowing from the presses of Philadelphia and Denver at an almost unimaginable pace. Yet, amidst this sea of copper-plated zinc, one small anomaly managed to slip through unnoticed, a mistake that would later command the attention of collectors and historians alike. To most, the 2015 penny would seem unremarkable. Its zinc core, clad in copper, and its standard diameter and weight were all carefully calculated. The design had not changed since 2010, when the Union Shield replaced the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Minting technology was more advanced than ever, with stringent quality controls ensuring uniformity across the millions of coins struck each day. And yet, perfection remained elusive. It was in this context of efficiency and precision that an error coin, a testament to the unpredictability of the minting process, was quietly born. For years, this error remained undiscovered, blending seamlessly into the flow of commerce. But fate had its plans, and in early 2021, a young collector named Emma Bradley stumbled upon a peculiar find. Emma, a high school teacher by day and an amateur numismatist by passion, spent her weekends poring over rolls of coins sourced from local banks. She enjoyed the methodical process of examining each piece, hoping to uncover a rare date or variety. It was during one such routine session that she came across a 2015 Lincoln penny that immediately struck her as odd. At first glance, the coin seemed ordinary. But when Emma tilted it under her magnifying lamp, she noticed something unusual about the obverse. The word "liberty" appeared distorted, with the B and E faintly doubled. The doubling wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to catch her trained eye. The date, 2015, also seemed slightly irregular, with a ghost-like shadow suggesting a misalignment during the striking process. Intrigued, she flipped the coin to examine the reverse, where the Union Shield revealed its own set of anomalies. The horizontal lines of the shield stripes were incomplete, fading as if the die had not struck with full force. Emma's heart raced. She had seen doubling errors before, but this one was different. It lacked the boldness of the famous 1955 double die or the dramatic flair of other high-profile errors. Instead, its subtleties made it all the more intriguing, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. She quickly set aside the coin and continued her search, hoping to find others like it. But after examining hundreds more, she realized this penny was unique. Unable to contain her curiosity, Emma turned to the online numismatic community, sharing high-resolution images of her find. Reactions were mixed at first. Some dismissed the anomalies as machine doubling, a relatively common and less valuable occurrence. Others pointed out the incomplete strike on the reverse, suggesting a possible issue with die pressure. One expert in the forum, however, offered a tantalizing theory: the coin might be the product of a rare combination of errors, a partial die strike and rotational misalignment during the minting process. Emma knew she had to dig deeper. She sent the coin to a professional grading service for evaluation, carefully packaging it and waiting anxiously for their verdict. Weeks later, the results arrived, and they exceeded her expectations. The coin was graded MS65 red, with the errors officially attributed as a die misalignment combined with a weak strike. This combination, while subtle, was exceedingly rare for the 2015 penny. The graders noted that such anomalies typically occurred in older coins, making this modern error an outlier. News of Emma's discovery spread quickly. Collectors began combing through their own 2015 pennies, but no similar examples surfaced. Auction houses contacted her, eager to include the coin in their upcoming sales. Meanwhile, numismatic publications featured articles analyzing the error, speculating on its origins and rarity. Theories abounded. Some suggested the die had been improperly seated during the striking process, while others believed the zinc planchet had been slightly warped before being struck. Emma, however, was not in a hurry to sell. For her, the coin represented more than monetary value; it was a symbol of the unpredictable beauty of collecting. She displayed it at local coin shows, sharing her story and encouraging others to look more closely at the coins they often overlooked. The penny became a sensation, sparking renewed interest in modern errors and challenging assumptions about the predictability of contemporary minting. By 2023, only one additional example of the error had been reported, reinforcing its status as an ultra-rare variety. This second coin, discovered by a collector in Oregon, shared the same distinctive traits: faint doubling on the obverse, incomplete reverse details, and a slightly off-center strike. The rarity of these coins, combined with their condition and error characteristics, caused their value to skyrocket. Initially, Emma received offers of $10,000 to $15,000 for her penny. By 2024, after the second example was authenticated and the coins gained further recognition, offers had climbed to $50,000. The Oregon coin was sold at a private auction for $62,000, setting a new benchmark. Emma's penny, graded higher and accompanied by a compelling backstory, was appraised at an estimated $85,000. Today, the 2015 1-cent penny error is one of the most talked about modern coins in numismatic circles. Valuations for verified examples range from $35,000 to $85,000, depending on grade and provenance. Yet beyond its monetary worth, the coin stands as a reminder of the endless possibilities hidden within the ordinary. In an age where precision reigns, even the smallest imperfection can transform something common into something extraordinary. Emma's discovery proves that the thrill of the hunt is alive and well, and that treasures can still be found where we least expect them.